everybody and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new, my name is Orlagh and today I'm going to speak a little bit about cultural differences between people in Madrid and people in the UK. I should say people in Spain and people in the UK, but I've only ever lived in Madrid, so I'm going to base this off my personal experience of living in Madrid for the last 6 years. I am from the UK, I'm from a small town in North Wales, and yeah, I've been living in the capital of Spain, Madrid, for the last 6 years, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about the cultural differences or the culture shocks I have experienced while living here. And if you see dye on my fingers while I'm speaking, I'm currently dyeing bedding, didn't use gloves, and now my hands look a little bit like Shrek, so we're just going to go with it. Okay, so before we get started with my 10 cultural differences that I have experienced, obviously I just want to preface this by saying this is my personal opinion. These are the things I've experienced in the last 6 years. I'm not saying either British people or Spanish people are better or right or anything like that. These are just the different things I've noticed as a foreigner living in Spain. So I hope you enjoy this video and, you know, take it for the light-hearted observations that they are. And without any further ado and waffle, let's get into number 1. Personal space bubbles. So if you're familiar with British people, I think I didn't realise how reserved Brits actually are until I've moved to different countries. I've lived in China, Russia and now Spain. And yeah, British people in general, obviously these are all going to be massive generalisations, but British people in general aren't that touchy-feely, especially with people they don't know or they don't know very well. And in Spain, in Madrid, it's the exact opposite. So it's customary here to greet somebody with dos besos, which means 2 kisses, and that's a mwah mwah kiss on either cheek. And in the UK we have a myriad of different ways to greet people, and it's actually a little bit more awkward, I think, in the UK, because at least here, you know, in general, even in a business setting, often that people will greet each other like that. Typically men will give each other handshakes, but you know, I have seen men greet each other like that as well. So you kind of know what you're getting, like you know what you're signing up for here in Spain. And in the UK it could be anything from like a hug, a kiss on the cheek, a handshake, an awkward like, "You're right," from the opposite side of a table, and it's a little bit more unpredictable and awkward. So not that I'm giving any side like points or anything, but I think the Spanish way is easier because obviously, you know, not everybody likes physical touch, and that's absolutely fine and valid, but at least you know going into a social situation what the kind of benchmark is, I guess, whereas in the UK it can be a little bit more awkward. So differences in greetings is one of the biggest ones, and just in general personal space. I think in the UK we're all very conscious we have a personal space bubble, and you know not to enter someone else's bubble unless obviously you're very close to them or you're in a relationship with them or they're your friend. But even still, you'll sit on a sofa and you know the distance, or when you're speaking to somebody you know the distance that should be for us. And here it's completely different. The personal space bubble is way smaller. I was asking somebody a question in the shop the other day, and it was a member of staff, and she was like right here in my face. And obviously as well, we're still, you know, in the kind of midst of the whole, you know, Cardi B coronavirus situation as well, so you kind of have to take that into account. But even before that, like the idea that someone can be like this close to my face that I don't know, I automatically take a step back and I'm like, so yeah, I would say our personal space bubbles are very different in that respect. Kind of related to personal space is staring. So here I find it's very common to stare at somebody and not look away. So like imagine you're on the train and you see somebody, and maybe you're not even staring at them because you think they're fit or attractive, but you're just kind of staring because you're looking at what they're reading, or maybe you like their outfit, or maybe you're daydreaming. I feel like the default setting for most Brits is when you realise somebody's realised you're staring at them, you look away. So imagine I'm staring at you now, loving me down the lens. You know, I might be like, and as soon as you look at me, I'm like, ooh, like looking away. I feel conscious, I don't want to have disturbed you. And obviously this is in general, there's going to be some people out there who just stare at you and are creepy or whatever. But here that kind of doesn't exist. Like if somebody's staring at you and you clock them staring at you, they don't feel that initial pull to look away. which is kind of disconcerting if you're not used to it, and it feels a little bit like a violation of your space. You're like, why is this person still looking at me? And even if they're doing it in a nice way, like there was an old lady a couple of weeks ago on the metro, and you know, I had Obi, my little dog, and I had him in my arms, and of course he's really cute, and she was staring, but I was sort of like, cute dog, you know, ooh. And then like she kept looking, and I'm like, well, I want to go back to what I was doing, but there's this like prolonged eye contact situation going on, and it ends up being a little bit awkward. So yeah, so I'm going to put that all under like personal space bubble, personal touch kind of greetings, all under number 1, and number 2 is kind of related to that, and it's PDA. So if you don't know what PDA stands for, it is public displays of affection, and again, in general, here it's seen as way more normalised and fine to be like full on getting off with somebody in public. I think in the UK it's a bit more like, you know, maybe teenagers are doing that in a park, or maybe in the corner of a coffee shop, but in general people would be like, oh god, get a room. Like they're kind of a little bit like put off by it, like they don't want to see it necessarily. Whereas here, like again, a couple of months ago I was in a coffee shop and there was a couple who would have been at least mid-50s, full on snogging each other's face off. I'm there with my book, like with my, you know, flat white, trying to sort of, you know, I don't know, get 20 minutes to, you know, save my mental health. And I can just hear this, like, I'm not going to recreate the noises, we all know what they sound like, but like audibly, like over the sound of my noise cancelling headphones, which to be fair didn't have music playing, they were just there to like, I think any fellow introverts will know the kind of wanting to block yourself away a little bit, and I could just hear them snogging, and I thought, on the one hand, okay, like have a nice little date or whatever, but it's not even like they were teens with nowhere else to go, like they're fully grown adults with houses and flats or other places, but here it's just seen as fine, so I've kind of got to either adapt to it or just be like grossed out in private, because obviously I love love, who doesn't love love, but I don't think the person enjoying their kind of panini and cup of tea next to me needs to hear my saliva. But yeah, so that's another cultural difference, PDA. And I'm going to pause here to just remind you that I have lots of other videos about Madrid if you're interested, so obviously don't click off just yet. We have another 8 reasons or 8 differences to go, but I'm going to put them up in the cards here, so make sure to go and check them out after watching this. And I'm really close to 1,000 subscribers, so if you enjoyed this video at all or enjoyed seeing my Shrek dyed finger hands, which actually don't look bad on camera, so looks like I'm just making it up, but they're there, then yeah, I'd love if you gave this video a like and subscribe to my channel. That would be really great. And yeah, after that little plug, let's move on to reason number 3. So difference number 3 is that in general Spanish people are very relaxed with time. So I know everyone's heard the kind of stereotype of Spanish people are always late, and I don't even just mean that, I mean a little bit deeper than that in terms of being relaxed with time. Like, I think we'll all know, if you're a Brit watching this, that second-hand stress feeling you get, or even first-hand stress if you're in, you know, doing it, of when you see somebody trying to pack their shopping in Lidl or Aldi or even any other supermarket where you're kind of struggling to put everything in bags while paying, while there's a queue, and it's all a little bit stressful, and you feel that feeling of being like a nuisance to other people. Here, that kind of doesn't exist, like, and I still have that inner programming Brit inside, which is like, hurry, I'm a nuisance, which I think is kind of programming a lot of women get as well, to just be like, make yourself small, don't take up anyone else's time, that I've actually really kind of deprogrammed a lot while living here, to the point now where now I just take my time bagging up my shopping and there's a queue, but everyone else is taking their time, and it's not like they're doing it in an arsey way, like my time's more important than yours. It's just that people aren't making that person feel pressured to hurry up. So it's kind of a good practice of patience when you're the one waiting. Like at cash machines, people will take forever, and they're just there like, and then they've got their money and they're just looking at the receipt and there's a queue behind them, and I'm like, oh, I've got places to be. You know, I need to go get my flat white and hear people necking. But they just take their time, so it's quite good. I think it makes you more patient, and it also allows you the time when it's your turn to feel like you're not being rushed. So yeah, I would say that's definitely a cultural difference, like even to the point where most supermarkets have, I know some supermarkets in the UK have them, but definitely not all. You know, when you're packing your shopping, there's like almost like a divider to divide all of your shopping so it goes to the left, for example, and then the cashier, the cashier, don't know why I said that, cashier, words, not like my job is teaching English or anything, but yeah, so the cashier can start with the second customer's stuff and put it down the right hand side, so again you're not rushed when you're packing your things. So yeah, even on the bus, like paying for your bus ticket, people aren't always necessarily like prepared to get their money out in advance, like they're sort of fiddling around before they've paid. But yeah, it's made me a lot more patient as a person, I think, which is good. And in general, I would say British people are very like, I don't know, I feel like we're in a hurry sometimes for no reason, and it's like that idea of like, I must be somewhere, stress, and we all need to collectively take a breath. But having said that, I think I'm naturally a little bit of a late person. My inner clock is always at least 5 minutes late, if not 10 minutes late, so the kind of Spanish lateness suits me okay. Obviously, if you're working and you have a class, for example, or a meeting, like, you know, they're going to start more or less on time. It's not like people are rolling up to work half an hour late every day, of course they're not, but the kind of boundaries around, if you say you're meeting a friend at 3 p.m, here, 3 p.m. does not mean 3 p.m. It means like, see you at 10 past at the earliest. Whereas, and you know, I went out a couple of weeks ago and we were meant to meet everybody at 10 and people were still rolling up at like 12:30. Like, it's not really as set, whereas in the UK, again, people are late, of course they are, but the kind of cultural idea is that you're more or less on time. And if you're, you know, imagine you were 2.5 hours late to your friend's party, like here it's like, okay, cool, you've turned up late, let's go get a drink, whereas in the UK you'd be like, why are you so late, like who died? So yeah, that's definitely a big difference time-wise. Okay, so number 4 is around drinking culture. So Brits have a reputation, I think worldwide at this point, for like the binge drinking British culture of alcohol, and I would definitely say that is true and valid. Like only last week Celtic was here playing football in Santiago Bernabeu Stadium, and I have classes literally a 1-minute walk from the stadium. Like you can see the stadium from this person's flat, and like the drinking and like the noise and the littering after the Celtic team had left, it was just like pandemonium everywhere. So I think everybody knows the kind of binge drinking Britain culture about alcohol, and it isn't great. I think it's very much like more, you see me doing this, my fringe is going right in my eyeballs, which, you know, isn't great when you need to see for life. But yeah, so I think the idea of drinking in the UK is that excess equals better. Like even the standard pints of beer in the UK is in a pint glass, whereas if you order a beer here, you'd ask for a canya, which is like this big, or a canya doble, which is a double canya, which is like this big. I'll put some pictures here for comparison. And obviously those people are going to drink more beers, like more glasses like this, but it's done in a way that's a little bit more drinking to enjoy rather than drinking to get absolutely, you know, hammered. And obviously with teenagers and stuff it's different. I think teenagers globally are always going to want to get drunk, and students and stuff, but I mean not everybody, but that's kind of the majority. But just the attitude is very different. Like for example here, it's really normal to have a glass of wine or a couple of glasses of wine at lunchtime at around 1 or 2. Nobody bats an eyelid, it's fine, you have it with a meal and it's all good. But I think if I was drinking wine with my lunch a couple of days a week in the UK, people would assume I had a problem. They'd think, oh wow, Orlagh's drinking a couple of glasses of red at 2 p.m, like what an alky. However, that same person when it's 5:30 would go to the pub and drink a bottle of wine. Do you know? So I think we have in the UK some really troubled relationships with alcohol. I think we're very much like drinking in excess and drinking to kind of just get drunk, whereas here it's more common to go for food with drinks. Like every time you order a drink you'll get a tapa, like a snack, either free with the drink, although that's becoming a lot less common in Madrid now unfortunately, but it's still very popular in other parts of Spain. But people will order food with drinks, And again, I know if you go out for cocktails in the UK, you might have like a bowl of crisps or something like that, or like beer and nuts, but here it's done kind of like you're drinking slowly throughout the night whilst eating, as opposed to the UK where you get like absolutely smashed and then go for a kebab. So I think the drinking habits of both places are very different. Number 5, dogs versus babies. So this is my observation I've shared with a few friends, and some have gone completely, I agree, and other ones have gone, oh, I haven't really noticed. But in the UK, we're a very big culture of dog lovers. I think it's, you know, a lot of people have dogs as pets. You know, we're seen as a kind of country who loves to have dogs and pamper our dogs and buy a lot of treats and toys for our dogs and things like that. And of course, people in Spain love dogs too. I'd say not to the same extent. Like the whole pet market is like kind of, you know, getting accessories for your dogs is like, it's here now, but it's almost a couple of years behind the UK, I would say, in that respect. But my experience is this. In the UK, if I see somebody's dog and I go, oh my God, what a cute dog, can I stroke them? The owner will be like, oh my God, yeah, my dog is called Ronnie. We adopted him 3 years ago. His favourite food is peanut butter. Here, stroke him. Do you want a picture? And they'll tell you the dog's life story while being really, really proud about their dog. And it's seen as normal to go and stroke somebody's dog and it's fine. But if I saw a cute baby in the UK and I was like, oh, cute little baby in the pram, or even as, you know, a kind of, you know, young adult woman, even if I'm with my mum or, you know, friends, and I look very non-threatening, a lot of the times people, especially if you don't have a child there with you, are a little bit like, why are you talking about my baby? Like there's almost this kind of leftover maybe like white van stranger danger idea from like the 80s and 90s of the fact that like, she thinks my baby's cute, she's a pedo. Like it's quite, and again, not everybody, you know, like these are generalizations, but it's different. It's kind of like, oh God. However, the exact opposite exists here in Madrid. I have a dog, and even if I go over to somebody else with a dog and I'm like, what's your dog's name? Blah, 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 blah. They're almost like, like, okay. Like they're almost a little bit like, yeah, they're a dog. Like it's not so much. And again, of course they love their dogs, but I don't think they're as proud to show them off in the same way. And especially before I had a dog, if I saw somebody walking with a dog or a dog in a coffee shop and I wanted to go get my dose of like daily serotonin from this amazing, beautiful, cute dog, it was almost a little bit like I was a bit of an oddball for doing that. To the point where sometimes you'd be like, can I stroke your dog? And people are looking at you like I'd asked if I could like stick my fist up there, you know, Heine. Rogue reference. Whereas the opposite is here with babies. So if there's a cute baby, I remember a couple of years ago I was in a coffee shop and the table next to me there was a cute little toddler, and I just looked over and smiled and went like, oh cute. And the dad was like, yeah, their name is, I don't know, this is Juan. Look at him, he's so cute, look at his belly, he's teething at the moment, yeah. And told me the whole sort of life story of his baby. So I don't know, maybe this is only me, but it seems like the ideas of dogs and babies are kind of flipped. Interesting observation nonetheless, but at least now I have my own dog that I can fuss over instead of seeming like a random dog thief in public spaces. Okay, so number 6 is directness. So I, for a long time here, when I was like maybe living here for about a year, maybe even up to the 2-year mark, really had a problem with how to communicate in Spanish, because I wanted to put please everywhere and I wanted to say the most polite form. So for example, if I was ordering a coffee in the UK, so I go to Costa or Cafe Nero or like an independent, any other coffee shops are available, I might say, hey, yeah, please can I have a flat white with oat milk? And then they would give me it and I would, thank you very much, blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, please is used at least a couple of times in that conversation. If you translate that directly to Spanish, it makes sense grammatically, but people don't say it. If you'd say like, for example, I would like, you know, quería un café, por favor, it's just not said. Like it's sometimes said, but it's very polite and people would think like, you're only getting a coffee, like what's with the politeness? So the most kind of common phrase to use would be me pones, which basically means put me. So for example, me pones un latte porfa, which is like, put me a latte please, which is like saying in English, give me a coffee. So for a long time I had to really like just tell my brain that what I was saying was really polite, even though it was just a standard way to ask for something, because my inner Brit was like, but where are the 100 pleases? Like I felt really, really rude. Which it isn't that the way of asking in Spanish is rude, it's just that the way we ask in the UK is so polite that we, you know, which politeness is great, don't get me wrong, but it's almost like I didn't realise how polite we are in a lot of conversations until I've lived in other countries. And even the directness sometimes, like, you know, you might ask for something and it's like, well, we'll get onto that with customer service later. But yeah, very direct, not so many pleases, not so many sorries for stuff. You know, people here aren't necessarily apologising for just existing like we do in the UK. Almost to the point where when I go back, like for example, it would have been probably like last Christmas at this point, I was in a supermarket and there was a woman over here and I was here and she was nowhere near me. Like she didn't do anything to like bash into me or nothing. And I looked up to get something and she went, oh, sorry. And I was like, sorry? Like she didn't even... It's like we use sorry as like hello, or it's like we use it so much that it's like recognisable when I live here. So yeah, definitely very direct in Spain and almost over polite in the UK. And I think there's definitely a middle ground somewhere that we could all enjoy. Okay, so linking to that is number 7, which is customer service and bureaucracy. So this is a big one, and I think I actually talked about it more in my Madrid pros and cons of living here video. But to sum it up, customer service here is in general pretty non-existent. So I say this as a British person, not even as an American, and obviously in America, in the States, customer service is a huge thing. They rely on tips often, and to the point where it's very in your face, maybe a bit over the top sometimes. I'm not even coming from that perspective. I'm, you know, and some of my American friends here are like, at the lack of customer service here. I just say this as a Brit who's used to not being made to feel like very unwelcome when I'm trying to pay you for something. But I've had jobs since I was 14. I've worked in restaurants, cafes, bars, like clothes shops, loads of stuff. And if I ever kind of treated customers the way I've been treated here, I'd have been fired like instantly. Even silly things, like if you're in a clothes shop, like when I used to work in New Look, for example, if I had like a load of clothes and there was a customer that needed to go past, the customer goes first and then I go. Whereas here, you'll be like bashed out of the way. And it's just like, you're in my way, even though you're a customer trying to buy something. Obviously there are exceptions, but I often find the exceptions are places you either go to often or places that appeal maybe to a more international audience, and maybe they've cottoned on that service needs to be a little bit better. But I'm not even talking about like wanting people to like blow my nose for me and stir my coffee. I just mean like the general lack of any politeness. Like I was in a coffee shop a couple of weeks ago, we'd ordered like, there was 3 of us there, we must have spent between the 3 of us easily like 50 euros maybe on a brunch for 3 people. We'd ordered coffees, like the lot, and we got through the tap water that was on the table already. It was empty, and I asked again very politely, like, can we have some more tap water please? And she looked at me like I'd asked if it was okay if I could like slit her mum's throat. Like honestly, like no, like nothing, just like a complete like. And you know, at the very beginning of living here, I was thinking like, have I said something wrong in Spanish? And now I just realised no, it's just the lack of customer service. So on some days, you, like if you're having a good day, you can be like, yeah, whatever, like I'll just drink my coffee and fuck you. But on some bad days where maybe you've popped out to just get a bit of respite and then you're paying somebody money. And again, I know I've worked retail jobs before, it is difficult, of course it is, and that's why I'm always really, really polite. But you know, it's not much to kind of smile, and not even smile, just don't be rude. So yeah, customer service, it ain't great. And to add to that, the bureaucracy, like if you need to go get forms or like anything administrative here, it's really tough. But then again, it probably is in the UK as well from a foreigner's perspective. If there was like a foreigner trying to get some papers in the UK that I tried to get here in Spain, you know, you probably would have similar kind of things go wrong there as well. So really it's kind of the customer service that's the big hitter, let's say. Okay, Okay, so number 8 is the difference in overall kind of lifestyle and how people like to live. So again, I think this is very weather dependent, but in the UK it's quite indoor based. Like even if you're out with friends, like you're going to a pub or a bar or the cinema, like they tend to be indoor activities, whereas Spanish people in general live outdoor a lot more, which again obviously is because of the weather. Like if you have really nice warm summer nights or boiling summer nights where you're melting, you're going to want to spend more time outside. And again, because of the weather, you know, if you're kind of hot all day and then the evening cools off, people like to go and enjoy a drink on a terrace or, you know, be in a park and be outside. Whereas I think in the UK we're very much more indoors people, even if that is like being with other people like your friends but indoors. And I do think that mostly comes down to the weather. But to the point where it's very common here to see families with very small kids out on the streets even at midnight. Like, you know, the other night I heard some crying outside and I was like, what's going on? It was just a family walking home and their kid was sleepy. And it was like 1 a.m. And the kid would have been like 4 or 5 years old, whereas I don't think that kind of happens in the UK. Everyone's already inside at that point. But it does mean that I feel a lot safer outdoors here. For example, would have been about 2 months ago now, I fell off my e-scooter, which was a bit of a disaster. I was having a really bad week and this was just like the cherry on top of the cake. So I basically came flying off of it, really badly did my knee in, like I've still got a huge big scar. And the people who helped me up, and it would have been maybe 1 o'clock in the morning, and the people who helped me out were an old couple. They would have been at least 70, but they were just going for a little walk. So I just think if there's kids and families and old people on the street at 1 a.m, of course you're going to feel a lot safer than in the UK, for example, where in general the only people out on the streets at that time of night are either drunk people or maybe like a big gang of teenagers. So yeah, so that's definitely a big difference I have noticed in terms of lifestyle. Okay, so number 9 is related to family. So family is very, very important here in Spain. And I'm not saying it's not important in the UK, but I think in general, the family unit here is a lot bigger. I think in the UK, we tend to think more of like the nuclear family. It's like your parents, you know, the kids and your siblings, and then if you have kids, the grandkids. And even still in the UK, like not as many people are close to their grandparents as they are here. Whereas here the family unit includes all of the aunties, the uncles, the cousins. Like for example, last weekend for was it last weekend? Yeah, we had a bank holiday weekend, and you know, I asked my students, what are you up to? And they're like, oh, hanging out with the cousins and the grandparents. And they hang out with their cousins so often that it's almost like the cousins are siblings as opposed to being people you see just once a year at Christmas. And I know in the UK, I have friends who are really close to their family and have a big family. I have friends who only have like one parent and no grandparents. I think it varies a lot more, whereas here there's a lot more kind of social obligation to be with the family often. And again, one of my students said it's not always a good thing because, you know, if you're working all week and then you have 2 days on the weekend and one day is to see one set of in-laws and the other days to see the other set, then maybe you don't have a lot of time just you and your partner or you as like a small family. So obviously there's pros and cons to both sides, but family here are definitely, you know, it kind of goes family, friends. But I feel like in the UK it's like friends, family. Again, depending on the relationship you personally have with your family, but family is something that's really, really important here in Spain. And you can often see people go out for dinner and there's a huge table of like 20 people and you think, oh wow, it's somebody's birthday, and it's like, no, it's just the family having a Sunday meal, which I think is really lovely. And I always look at them and go, can I join? Me and Obi there like, you got vegan options? Number 10 is the difference here with Christmas. They actually celebrate the Three Kings as opposed to Santa. So it's the Three Kings that bring presents to children, not Santa Claus. Santa Claus is becoming a little bit more popular here. I think the parents kind of split between the 2 days, especially if, for example, I have friends here who are from the UK or from Ireland who have a Spanish partner. So then they do it like, obviously to follow both traditions, like a half and half situation. But in general, Spanish families mainly just celebrate the Three Kings, and they come on January the 6th. And they have, I've forgotten the name of it here, Calabgata? I forgot. I'm sure it's something like that. I'll put it here in a little title card. But yeah, and the Three Kings come, they go to the parade, the Three Kings throw sweets at everybody, and it's like a whole thing. And then the Three Kings bring the presents to the kids. So they don't really celebrate on the 25th as much. Maybe some families do mark the occasion, but it isn't their big celebration. Their big celebration is, yeah, around the 6th and the 7th of January. And they were the 10 cultural differences. There are so many more, but I had to do some sort of structure to this video, so it wasn't just me waffling on for 3 hours. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're from Madrid or Spain or the UK or any other country and you have any questions, please put them in the comments box down below. I hope you enjoyed watching, and yeah, like and subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you again around these parts soon. Thank you very much. Goodbye.